If you missed your favorite show or interview, visit episodes on our website at theworldtoday.news. Our live shows are also on X, Facebook, YouTube, Rumble, Kick, and Twitch. Now there really is no reason to miss out on anything on theworldtoday.news.
For The World Today, this is James O'Neill. German Vice Chancellor Lars Klingbeil pledged in Kyiv that Berlin, alongside European allies, is prepared to provide Ukraine with security guarantees to deter future Russian aggression. He emphasized bolstering Ukraine's domestic arms production and said a ceasefire should precede peace talks. Some European states, including Germany, Britain, and France, have suggested sending troops to safeguard Ukraine's borders if a U.S.-backed settlement is reached, though Russia has warned against it. Since 2022, Germany has given Ukraine over 50 billion euros, making it Kyiv's largest supporter in Europe. President Trump said the Ukraine conflict marks a historic shift in warfare, calling it a drone war, rivaling World War II in significance. Speaking with South Korea's president, he noted drones now account for most battlefield casualties and are reshaping combat. The administration is aligning defense policy to embrace unmanned systems, issuing an executive order to boost domestic drone production and ease regulations. Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth called drones the biggest battlefield innovation in a generation, urging rapid adoption across U.S. forces. Officials say low-cost prototypes are already moving into combat readiness. Australia will invest $10 billion in drones, counter-drone systems, and autonomous technology by 2032, Defense Minister Pat Conroy announced. Project Land 156 will deliver rolling modernization to keep pace with rapid battlefield changes, drawing lessons from Ukraine where drones dominate land, sea, and intelligence operations. Highlighting the MQ-28A Ghostbat, Australia's first homegrown military aircraft in 50 years, Conroy said local industry is central with 200 firms involved. Despite U.S. calls to raise defense spending further, Canberra is sticking with plans to increase defense to 2.3% of GDP by 2034. French Prime Minister François Bayrou has called a September 8th confidence vote after opposition parties rejected his 44 billion euros austerity plan to cut the deficit, currently 5.8% of GDP. Proposals include scrapping Easter Monday and Victory Day as public holidays, freezing welfare and tax bracket adjustments for inflation, and imposing a solidarity levy on the wealthy. The National Rally, France Unbowed, the Socialists and Greens have vowed to oppose him, calling the plan unfair. If Bayrou loses, his government will collapse, echoing the ouster of Michel Barnier's short-lived cabinet in 2024. Protests dubbed Block Everything are planned for September 10th. Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky marked the 34th Independence Day in Kyiv, joined by Canadian Prime Minister Mark Carney, calling for greater global pressure to force Russia into a just peace. He emphasized Ukraine's resilience, noting Russia's mounting losses and insisting peace must preserve dignity and security. Zelensky's remarks followed U.S. President Trump's suggestion that Ukraine expand strikes inside Russia. While both Moscow and Kyiv claim readiness for talks, each accuses the other of blocking negotiations. Zelensky stressed leadership-level talks as the only way forward, stating Ukraine is unafraid of dialogue, but Russia resists meaningful meetings. Nigel Farage announced Reform UK's Operation Restoring Justice, pledging to track down, detain, and deport all illegal migrants in Britain. The plan calls for withdrawing from the European Court of Human Rights, repealing the Human Rights Act, and suspending refugee conventions for 5 years. Migrants would face immediate detention and removal, though a self-deportation scheme offers £2,500 in voluntary flights. Nations refusing return agreements could face visa bans or sanctions. Farage argued only mass deportations will stop channel crossings, citing President Trump's U.S. policies and Australia's turn back the boats.
The public have now just had enough. And what began as a protest of mothers and concerned citizens outside the Bell Hotel in Epping has now spread right across the country.
This has been James O'Neill for The World Today.
If you missed your favorite show or interview, visit episodes on our website at theworldtoday.news. Now there really is no reason to miss out on anything on theworldtoday.news.
And back again, and thanks for joining me too. It's in the morning, I think it's 8 o'clock in the UK. It's 5 o'clock here in Australia. It's about 3 in the morning, I think, in the US or in New York. And in Bangladesh, it's 1928. No, I'm just being rude about Bangladesh. And the next guest, by the way, is Dr. Greg Simons from Bangladesh, so I'll behave myself. I just want to make note and point out that we had that terrible COVID and the lies and the misinformation, all that sort of stuff from government. Senator Katie Gallagher has dismissed Alex Antique's motion for the release of TGA COVID-19 vaccine safety monitoring documents. Why would you do that? She calls it a trawling expedition from another anti-vaccination senator. Gobsmacked. Why wouldn't you release those documents? So what? So what if he is an anti-vaccination senator or a Martian or a chicken or whatever he identifies as? Nothing to do with the document. It has the information we want. Anyway, Labor and the Greens voted it down 33-26. Why wouldn't they want us to know the truth? Oh, the truth will hurt you. No, it won't. It will hurt you. Hurt the government. And whether they're Labor or the Conservatives, they are all painted with the same brush. Cam, could you play No Release, please?
The government does not support this motion from Senator Antic. It's another trawling expedition from an anti-vaccination senator. In this case, it seeks documents stretching back to February 2021. It's an unacceptable diversion of departmental resources. The period, of course, stretches back to the Morrison government and the national COVID-19 vaccination program started by that government, which of course has continued under the Albanese government. Vaccination is the single most important step each of us can take to minimise the risk of severe disease and death associated with COVID-19 infection. Long-term data and real-world experience continues to confirm both the safety and efficacy of vaccines for the prevention of severe disease, hospitalisations and death from COVID-19, and the TGA closely monitors the safety of COVID-19 and has well-established and robust systems in place to capture reports of suspected adverse events.
It's just rubbish. I mean, look at the US CDC director Susan Monoraz has been ousted by RFK Jr. after she attempted to push for the COVID vaccine. That's according to multiple reports. We'll play that later with Hedley Rees. So government's lying. I can tell you now, the Australian government are lying. You don't have to, you could call me whatever you want. They are lying. They're hiding the information. Why would the government in Australia hide that information? Why wouldn't they release it? They don't want you to know the truth. And this is not a conspiracy theory. It's as plain as daylight. And the same thing in the UK, the same thing in other countries. They don't want you to know the truth. They messed up big time, but they're not going to admit that. And it's a terrible, terrible, terrible indictment of our government. Bouncing off disaster after disaster. And they won't release that because, oh, you're a cooker. That's what they're saying. You're an anti-vax. Good on you. Good on you if you're an anti-vaxxer. Terrible thing to say. I didn't want that garbage in my veins. Look, I'm pretty healthy, as I probably dropped out of a heart attack. No. So I just think the government, whether they're conservative, I think Greg Simons would agree to, whether they're conservative or they're on the left, all bad. All bad. Bad, bad, bad. And if you are to disagree with any politician in Australia, I don't know if Greg's heard of this guy, Bob Katter. Bob Katter is, he's out there. He's out there. If you believe in Martians, well, there you are. There's evidence. But anyway, I want to play you this clip. If you could tell me any other politician except maybe in Brazil, where this would be allowed and lauded. Please tell me, send me a note quickly. Cam, can you play Bob?
You've got Lebanese heritage yourself. What would you
Oh, mate, don't say that, because that irritates me, and I punch blokes in the mouth for saying that. Don't you dare say that. My family have been in this country for 140 years, right? So and if you say anything like that, I have, on many occasions, punched blokes in the mouth, right? So I'm restraining myself today. I'm an Australian. My family have been here since the dawn of time. That's the end of it. Don't say that.
I'm sure that
Don't
you said it.
say that
I'm sure you said
because
it.
you're a racist. I want their names because we have had a tradition of toleration. These people are not tolerating us. So you won't tolerate us, we want you out of this country, right? Because this country is fed up with your, oh, we must be nice to everybody. Well, I'm not particularly nice to people that crossed the border, invaded another country and murdered over 1,200 people. Tick the boxes. Do they have democracy? Do they have rule of law? Do they have Christianity or some similar belief system? Do they have egalitarian traditions? Do they have industrial awards? Now, if they don't tick the boxes, they don't come here. If you have anti-Australian sentiments, then get the hell out of my country.
Lordy Lord, if you have anti-Australian sentiments, I wasn't sure if that was sentiments or sediments. I don't know, anyway. He's, and again, Greg Simons, you'll be intrigued to know he's an older fellow, and he's very prominent in the bush in Australia, where many say there's a slogan. And if you're watching from the UK or from any other part of the world, the slogan goes something like this: if it moves, shoot it. If it doesn't, chop it down. And that's our saying here, although I'm sure the New Zealanders would probably snaffle that one too. And finally, in this wild day of truly out of control politicians, what about this? In a New South Wales court has ruled that calling a male-born soccer player a man counts, or in Australia, a bloke counts as unlawful vilification. In New South Wales, the consequences of calling a biological man a man or speaking of biological truth are you're regarded as being a criminal. Up to $200,000 in fines, public apologies, mandatory re-education to affirm that men can become women and more, and failure to comply will result in further penalties. So there you are. 3 things from Australia. 1, we don't want you to know the truth. How dare you ask for those documents? If you ask for those documents, you're an anti-vaxxer. Then you have Bob Catter, wants to punch you in the nose for whatever reason. And then you have the court saying that if you call a man because he wants to play a woman's sport, you can go to jail, you can get $200,000 in fines, and you have to be re-educated. Anyway, so there you are. And the other one is CDC Director Susan Monaraz, which I'll play her clip later. So the whole world is going nuts. It's all built around premise of a lie, isn't it? Propaganda. Let me read you a couple of things here before we get into Greg and get him to comment. This is with regards to Gaza. Spanish director Pedro Almodovar, is that how you pronounce it? Anyway, Almodovar, has urged Spain's PM Pedro Sanchez to cut all diplomatic and commercial ties with Israel over its war in Gaza, calling it genocide. Another one here from Howard Beckett. Gaza City today, Israel intend to bomb it to rubble, as they did to Rafah. Bombs dropped by Netanyahu, weapons supplied by Trump and Starmer. All are guilty, all belong in The Hague. Some patients were dragged on beds for over 12 kilometres through rough terrain, while others were transferred in carts from the European hospital to Nasser Hospital. The urgent evacuation followed Israel's threat to attack the European hospital in southern Gaza Another one here. Inside the crowded corridors of NASA Medical Complex, the last functioning hospital in southern Gaza, Palestinian American nurse Amanda Nasser is witnessing a health system on the verge of collapse as relentless Israeli bombardment and a blockade pushed both patients and medical to the extremes. And finally, Steve Bannon says on Real America's Voice, anybody on TV saying Europe is united is lying. They're broke, gutless, cowards, no money, no weapons, no men, and this fiasco drags on. Trump said 5,000 Ukrainians dead. The real number is 625,000 killed or wounded in 2025 alone, and it's not even September. So we have all the propaganda from, whether it's Europe, whether it's Israel or the US, but it all looks terrible. It looks terrible for Israel in the eyes of the public. And the question to Greg Simons, thanks for joining us, Greg, but has Israel lost the propaganda war?
Well and truly, the horses bolted long ago, which is why you're getting these desperate measures by Netanyahu. I mean, you've even got the likes of Piers Morgan, who is daring to criticise. I mean, he is one of the most ardent cheerleaders of Netanyahu and Zionism, and he's gone. I mean, the only ones you've got for now are Trump and others. And I mean, that's because IPAC has got the short and curlies. They got it, they bought and paid for it. And that's only going to last so long because Israel and Netanyahu in particular is a liability, political liability. And the only thing that would force these politicians who are bought and paid for to actually drop their support would be the threat of being elected out based on their support. And you can see perhaps this is the beginning of this stage now.
Yeah, it's interesting. They've spent an enormous amount on influencers, MPs, other politicians from around the world. But the devastating photos of children starving in hospitals have made a huge impact. Also, thousands of protests around the world in support of Palestinians, including one on the weekend that had 350,000, at least collectively, around Australia. Tell me what's changed in the recent years and when support, how it used to be with Israel. How come it's all changed? Is it because of the cold hard fact that Israel are murdering people at the moment? Genocide is underway, and they're going to make sure not one living skerrit survives in the Gaza Strip. And is it because people are now understanding that what they've been telling us is lies, or is it other reasons for it? Why has it all changed? And there's still people who believe. Look at Andrew Bolt on Sky News in Australia. He still believes, Israel's got to defend itself, protect itself from those children who have been bombed. But so tell me, what's your views on it?
Yeah, there's nothing like genocide and self-defense. But if we're looking at this, I mean, it's so obvious that they used to sugarcoat it, or as the expression goes, they used to put lipstick on a pig, but they don't even do that anymore. I mean, the genocide and the ethnic cleansing is so in your face. I mean, they are doing it without any shame, and they're openly declaring it. And I mean, you have people. I mean, I think I've said this before. You actually have survivors from the Nazi Holocaust who are openly declaring this is what the Nazis did to us. They've absolutely destroyed support of Jewish communities. I mean, just look at New York. I mean, imagine having a Muslim mayor in New York. You're getting extraordinary shift in this politics because Israel. I would think this is all about Netanyahu. It's not even about Israel. I mean, he's the ultimate narcissist. I mean, he wants to stay out of jail. I mean, you got some parallels with Zelensky too, because I mean, if the war ends there, Zelensky is gone either permanently or at least out of the country. And I mean, you got the same situation. If Netanyahu actually puts an end to this, he's going to jail, not for genocide and ethnic cleansing, but abuse of power, corruption, and things like this. Uh, and just looking at the number of people who have left the country, you've actually got criticism inside Israel that, I mean, Israel is not going to survive this because of what Netanyahu has done. He's created the conditions for the downfall. I mean, and they don't seem to care. Anyone who criticizes them is immediately anti Semitic. Although, I mean, you do have the odd situation. A genocide against Palestinians is actually the ultimate anti Semitic expression. Palestinians are Semites, but they're using this crude propaganda and propaganda of desperation to try and shut things down, but you can't do it. I mean, you might have a few mainstream prostitutes like the BBC who try and hold the line, but what kind of line are you holding in this? I mean, it's an ultimate no-win situation for those defending genocide and ethnic cleansing.
I'm just intrigued at the the skew going down because if you go back a few years ago, I mean, Israel had a huge support base globally, and now there is no. I mean, it has been decimated. It's a bit like Gaza. The support, I mean, even though they spent a lot of money on the influencers and MPs, and brought them to Israel, visit the Holy Land, and all that sort of garbage.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it's like, well, we're going to kill everybody, but come and see how nice we are. I mean, truly, it's just terrible. How can they undo it? How can they? First of all, obviously, stop it. Just stop immediately. But how do they reverse this trend? Because it's not just now the hatred from, and there is hatred within the Middle East. Because if you kill people, the rallies aren't going to be too happy about that, so they're going to hate you. But the hatred now and the distaste for what Israel is doing and what Israel seems to stand for, it's growing by the day. And if it keeps going this way, Israel will have to protect itself from the whole world.
Well, this is the direction it's going. I mean, if we look at in the UK, you had that big public demonstration in support of the Palestine Action Group, or whatever it was called, which was listed as being a terrorist organisation by the Chairman Starmer government. And I mean, they arrested over 500 people in that. And these people went to that protest knowing that they can face up to 14 years in prison for freedom of expression. And the brave Met police, I mean, it took about 4 or 5 of them, but they managed to cart away a blind, disabled, wheelchair-bound guy who was about 70, 80 years old. They hauled him
He was a
away.
threat. He was a threat.
Yeah, a definite national security threat. But these are all acts of desperation, because if you cannot ignore any longer, you cannot justify, then the only option that you have left is to increase the level of coercion and repression. And of course, you do that, it's just going to continue to escalate. And the West is already, finished politically, economically, militarily, every which way. I mean, things like this are just going to hasten it. And then Israel has no host from which to have its existence, which is why I think for a brief moment they were trying to court countries like Russia and so forth. But I mean, you can't have that relationship which they have with the UK or the US, with countries from the global south. So they've got nowhere to go. And I mean, you can see what Netanyahu's doing. He's trying to shut down those because he got those within the security structures who are openly criticising him. You got people refusing to show up for the conscription and the rotations in Gaza and so forth. The military is stretched. I mean, they've been rampaging through southern Lebanon, through Syria, and now, I mean, with this, the whole economy is in tatters, and you've got a population leaving the country in droves. So, I mean, Israel is in no fit state to survive much longer. But, I mean, as I said earlier, I mean, Netanyahu doesn't seem to care about that. He seems to care about what's good for Netanyahu, and this is to keep things boiling. So he doesn't face, well, justice, if we call it that, but internal justice, not genocide and points like this.
They often say winners are grinners, and I see that Putin's been smiling a hell of a lot these days. He seems to be doing quite nicely in the propaganda war. He doesn't actually have to do a whole lot of propaganda. They still do it through Sputnik or through RT and stuff. But having said that, I also think RT is an excellent news service. So please don't let my comment about propaganda dispel they're a very, very good news service. We use a lot of the stuff at times, but Putin and Russia seem to be much to the horror of the West and Europe. They're standing quite nicely in the eyes of the public, and in doing the right thing, and they've made an offer to have peace. All they want is NATO to be out of it, and that Ukraine can't become part of NATO. And secondly, there's about 4 territories that should move over and be part of Russia, and that's also to protect the lives of those residents. So they're pretty straightforward request, and I think the world sees that, and I think that's why I think he's winning the propaganda war, even though his output of propaganda, and he doesn't need to do a whole lot, is quite minimal.
Yeah, I mean, the West do all the publicity for Russia and China and so forth, but by their arrogance, ignorance, hubris, lack of knowledge, or failure to admit the basic realities of life and geopolitics, because you've had all of these so-called Western leaders, so to speak. They have pinned their whole political future on defeating Russia and carving it up, something like what they did with former Yugoslavia. However, I mean, Russia in 2022, as opposed to Yugoslavia in the early 90s, are absolutely diametrically different. And they've put themselves in a corner where they feel their ability to admit that they stuffed up, they cannot do it because arrogance, pride before a fall. I mean, it's going to come. Look at Germany. I mean, you got Merz, quite a odious character, to put it diplomatically, stating, well, we're going to have to cut all social benefits to German citizens, including pensions, because we can't afford to give Ukrainians money. It's like, I mean, what kind of logic is this? It's absolutely ridiculous. And then they get surprised that AfD, Alternative for Germany, is going up and up in the polls. So, well, to protect democracy, we should ban those parties, alternative parties that are becoming popular because of the stupidity and arrogance of the mainstream parties.
Yeah, I just think I think the West has lost its bearings, and then you see the parade. What do they call themselves? The coalition of the willing. I mean, truly, it was. I mean, if you, and there was a photo of Donald Trump walking down the path, and you saw a dozen pair of feet poking out from his bottom. I mean, truly, the coalition of the willing they are just why do they want to keep going, Greg? Just tell me quickly. Why do they want this war to keep going? Because they can't win.
No, well, it's a money-making scheme, and they don't want to admit they're wrong. So while Ukrainians are dying, which they all admit, it's very profitable. I mean, and of course for Ukrainian elite, I mean, Zelensky with his, I don't know how much he would have stolen from those different funds, but if you're buying all of these lovely little properties in the Mediterranean, and you buy like a $5 million US flat for his parents in Israel, and you've got all of these things. I mean, it's going swimmingly if you're not directly getting chewed up on the front line. It's a detachment from reality. And as I say, I mean, the whole political reputation has been stacked on this. I mean, it's a stupid thing to do because the correlation of forces. I mean, Ukraine is tiny, even at its peak, when it didn't have, 1.5 million dead or whatever it is currently. Because, I mean, Ukraine was about a third of the population, and it's going against a country that is 1/8 of the planet. So, I mean, these things are never going to work, but the West has talked itself into a delusion that 500 years at the top, as they say, corruption, I mean, it's a corruption of the mind. And this absolute corruption has corrupted them absolutely. Because they're no longer able to think rationally and logically.
I totally agree. I think it's the disassembling of the West at the moment, and none of them seem to be putting a hand up to say stop. They're all, let's pull it all apart. Come on, let's go. I think it'll be an interesting time in the next probably 6 weeks, 8 weeks, when we have whether we do have a sort of a treaty signed or a ceasefire signed between Russia and NATO and Ukraine. I don't know yet. I see that Zelensky says there will be no peace unless I decide there'll be peace. But I can see him saying that as he's fleeing Kiev and running to anywhere else but his own country. It's anyway, it's all nuts, and I suppose it's all politics at the end of the day, which is quite revolting to say the least. Greg, if somebody wants to find out more about you, how do they do that?
Well, my name, and then I'm on X, but also ResearchGate, where you can find some of my different academic and popular science works which have been put up there. We should say I'm not particularly discreet, oddly enough, so I can be found on Propaganda in Focus and other for more practically oriented sort of works as well.
Well, I'm sure you're probably next to me. I mean, I know I have a bullseye on my head, I think, from about half the governments of the world. I have never received a Christmas card. I wonder why. Dr. Greg Simons, geopolitical commentator and an expert in media and communications. Thank you very much, sir. Coming up next, we'll have Hedley Rees here at the World Today.
People might tell you that Lyme doesn't kill people, but we are losing people. People disappear from their lives.
One of the scariest things that I had to deal with was memory loss. Not just like I don't remember what I did last week, but like I forgot all the words to my own songs. I remember going to my primary care physician and he was like, "You are 100% healthy, there's nothing wrong with you." And my response was, "That's impossible, I'm dying."
I wasn't working. I had all of these hospital bills. We had to move out of our home and move into my parents' basement.
I just wish I could have truly been present in those big moments, you know, when she took her first steps, or, her first day of preschool. Lyme is such a thief, and it goes undetected because no one is looking for it.
For more information and prevention tips, go to projectlyme.org.
Anticipate potential delays for the morning commute. In other news, a recent government report on prescription drug pricing points to corporate
Freedom of the press is about your right to know.
What are you talking about, man? Look at his stats.
It's about your right to be informed. Your right to access all types of information keeps us free as a nation.
No.
Today, there are real threats to press freedom.
Reaching residential areas by...
And your right to know about the world around us.
Look.
Some threats are obvious, some are easy to miss, but they all put our way of life at risk. We must defend against all of these threats, no matter what kind of news is important to you.
Justified putting American troops in harm's way.
That's a great question.
We must protect our right to know before it's too late. Understand the threats. ProtectPressFreedom.org.
The common housefly, caught in the clutches of the spider's web. Every move it makes just makes matters worse. Then, dinner time.
Feast on the captivating stories, videos, and helpful information on our website.
Whoa.
Dinner's ready.
Oh, man.
Escape is futile.
Just one more video.
Get stuck in our web.
This is today's News Talk, theworldtoday.news.
Okay, before we get into Hedley Rees, I just want to play this clip. It's the CDC Director Susan Monaraz, and she's been ousted by RFK Jr., which is great news, after she attempted to push the COVID vaccine, according to multiple reports. Cam, can you play CDC, please?
And Rich, some big news out of the CDC tonight.
Yeah, absolutely. Health and Human Services is announcing that the director of the CDC is out. This is just a few weeks after she was confirmed. Susan Monaraz is leaving. Also, this is on top of Reuters now reporting that several others at the CDC have issued their resignation letters. The reasoning is unclear, though. The New York Times is reporting it was over differences with Secretary Kennedy on vaccine policy. Federal regulators have just approved and limited COVID vaccines for Americans. That has also put them at odds with some doctors' groups who have issued their own recommendation on who should get COVID shots. Brett?
Rich Edson live on the North Lawn. Rich, thanks.
Okay, so she's been given the heave-ho. Others have resigned because they do damage. They hurt, they kill, maim, destroy families' livelihoods, and completely they just decimate the world. Many wouldn't agree, including my brother, who's probably watching this right now, but they do, and science says so. Hedley Rees is Managing Director and Lead Consultant at PharmaFlow Limited. Hedley, what's your first reaction to that?
Hallelujah. In that RFK Jr. is knocking it out of the park now. What we need to understand is that the CDC was the sort of Trojan horse, call it what you will, that was diluting FDA's powers. So they set up all these committees, all these people who didn't even have access to the data that was involved in approving drugs, like the supply chain data, the chemistry, manufacturing controls data. Unless you know that, you can't decide if a drug is safe or not. So, we can all remember these when Fauci was involved and all the conversations about these drugs are safe, and as a committee, we've approved these vaccines. But the fact is, always the sole arbiter of safety and efficacy of drugs is the competent authority in the US for that, and food and cosmetics is the FDA. And we're seeing now FDA is back in the driving seat. It's making the decisions based on data, or data, as they say in the US. And, to all respects, I think they're making the right decisions. They've basically stopped the £3.2 million drug for muscular dystrophy, which is a rare disease, and we'd all like to see a cure for that. But with 3 deaths, it needs to be investigated, and the shipments needed to stop. They have been stopped in the US, and we can see Europe starting to follow suit now. I think FDA is going to have a big influence on what happens in Europe and Australia and the rest of the world, because it's given these regulatory authorities the confidence to be able to make their own decisions based on data.
A post from RFK Jr. said, I promise 4 things. 1, to end COVID vaccine mandates. 2, to keep vaccines available to people who want them, especially the vulnerable. 3, to demand placebo-controlled trials from companies. And 4, to end the emergency. He's well on the way, isn't he? And yet we have, I just want to make reference to this, in Australia, and other parts of the world, they're saying, well, look at the administration. It's Trump. What would he know? He's almost an anti-vaxxer, not quite, even though he brought in warp speed. He's not quite right in the head, blah, blah, blah. They wouldn't know what they're talking about. And then we have Senator Katie Gallagher for the federal government, has dismissed another senator's motion for the release of TGA COVID-19 safety monitoring documents, as COVID-19 vaccine safety monitoring documents. She wouldn't release it and said it's because it was a trawling expedition from another anti-vaccination senator. That alone should, the huge alarm bell should go off, shouldn't it? Because here we are, somebody's asking for the data, documentation, and they're not going to release it because you're an anti-vaxxer. I mean, and these this attitude is not just for Australia. Look at New Zealand and other countries around the world. Look at some through Europe. They don't give a rat's about the patient's health, and they're trying to dig in as deep as they can so that they don't have to admit that they are responsible for the deaths of millions of people. How do we get around that? Because RFK Jr. is on the right track. These people, these horrible slugs of politicians, they've overdone their usefulness, haven't they?
Yeah, absolutely. I think the propaganda is still going on. It will go on for a while until it's obvious it's not working. But when Robert Kennedy Jr. says for people who want them, how many people are actually going to want them, knowing what we now know? So, and he's getting some flack for that because people are saying, oh, he's letting people have the COVID jab. He's even getting flack from the people who want to see these vaccines stop because he's not stopped them completely. But, politically, you don't do that. You say that people who want them can still have them if they are, if they've got a certain condition where they could be susceptible to a flu-like condition, such as what COVID was claimed to be. So I think he's very clever in the way he's positioned this. But when we look at, and he's also praised Marty Makary in what he's done at FDA, I think that's absolutely right. Because, FDA is bang on the ball now. And people like George Tidmarsh and Vinay Prasad, they're in there. They're not as public as they were because, they've been getting a lot of criticism, even from former FDA people who've been, reduction in force, who've left the FDA. So there's a bit of bad feeling. There's a significant amount of bad feeling from the people who've actually left. But it's pretty clear that the ones there now are, from what I can see, and my speciality is the supply chain. And if the supply chain integrity and proper quality isn't there, you're going to kill people. So, and the previous administration really didn't take any account of what happened in the supply chain, and that's why they were able to approve these drugs in less than 12 months. And just to say also, this emergency use authorization never was legitimate. The PrEP Act never was legitimate. No one repealed the Code of Federal Regulations, Title 21, which was the FDA's legal powers to close companies down. I've said before, the FDA guys on the ground wear guns and they've got like sheriff's badges on them. They can go into a company and they can shut them down. They have huge legal powers. That never changed. But of course, it wasn't happening at FDA because Peter Marks was there, who was waving all this stuff through at the behest of Bill Gates and the MHRA, who, as I say again, MHRA is the pivotal organization in the global scam. And I've just written to the chair to say they must recall the AstraZeneca injections because it's within their powers to do that. And if I don't hear back by tomorrow, they've given tomorrow as the deadline to give a substantive response. I'm then going to escalate it to politicians and the chair of the Health and Social Security Committee in Parliament, because AstraZeneca again all these injections are gene modified cell therapy using CRISPR technology. Now CRISPR, it's a long word, and it basically means we can chop up people's DNA and make a small strip, make a spike protein, and then we can put that into people's body. It can either be delivered with a viral vector, or it can either be mRNA technology. Now, I'm not a scientific expert, and being a scientist is not helpful in any of this. The scientist is the last person I go to for anything to do with medicines and medicine safety. So, and anyway, so all this has been a scam, and I can see it now with on LinkedIn, on X, and all this stuff. Hallelujah, it's coming out. I think it's only ever going to go one way. Once systems start to fall apart, the whole thing collapses. So I hope I'm not wrong. But what do you think, Mike?
Yeah, I think what we're looking at the moment is a complete disassembling of what we were told for the past couple of years. In fact, past 4 or 5 years. I have to say, Hedley, I'm intrigued with that they've revoked the emergency use authorization. What does this revocation mean for the future of the USA and other countries? Because that's a very serious thing. I mean, to revoke the EUA, so no more mandates, basically. How does it affect the entire globe?
Well, what a lot of people don't know is there wasn't an EUA outside of the US. It was called a conditional marketing authorization, and there was about 7 or 8 pages of conditions on which MHRA was able to approve a drug. And I've had those conditions for the last years, and I've been reading them and I thought, gosh, they've contravened all the conditions. But of course, no one knew. Now it's out. I was saying for the European Medicines Agency again, it was a conditional marketing authorization, and the conditions were contravened. And I think we're going to see in Europe and the UK with this conditional marketing authorization revoked, because you're going to kill people if you don't properly assess the safety of a drug. And the safety of a drug is always assessed based on the supply chain that made the product. It doesn't matter what you do in a laboratory. It's not laboratories that make these drugs, and they're not in Ukraine or anything like that. Or BARDA had very little to do with it. This was established contract manufacturers and big pharma companies working together to speed up the supply chain construction by at least a factor of 10, which means there's going to be quality non-compliances all over the place. And we're seeing that at the Pfizer plant in Wyeth Biopharma, the plant that made the first 33 batches, they had an FDA inspection where they had 12 objectionable observations, and they were bad. Contamination, people didn't know what they were doing. They were shipping product before it had been passed through quality control. You couldn't make it up. And I had a copy of that from a Freedom of Information Act request I put in, and I've shared that all over my with my newsletter and other things. And that plant should have been shut down immediately after the inspection, because remediation would not have been an option. It was systemically defunct, and but FDA is there now, and I've actually sent the document to Joy Titmarsh at FDA, who's head of the Centre for Drug Evaluation and Research. So if he hadn't seen it before, he's seen it now. And I'm sure, again, behind closed doors, they will be looking at the inspections that were carried out during the previous administration and finding very, very poor results of FDA inspections. And FDA inspectors are top notch. I've been part of an NDA approval, and I've been part of mock pre-approval inspections, and they leave no corners or no stone unturned when they do the inspections. But you have to act on what they find. It wasn't happening with the previous FDA. To me, it's happening now. I can see it happening.
Yeah, which is what the world needs. We need to have confidence in stuff that's supposedly going to make us better. mRNA, is it here to stay, or is it just too expensive to remove it completely?
Oh, it's going to go. At the moment, we've got all these small companies, these companies who are part of the sort of the gold rush, the rush to make billions and billions of dollars. They're no bigger than your corner shop. These companies, you look at the website and you can see these faces, people over collars and ties, head of research, head of this. There's nothing beneath them. And they are pretending that they can make these drugs safe. You can't, it's impossible to do it. And that's why we're seeing these safety issues. mRNA, you don't know, you haven't got a clue when they go into someone's body, what it's going to do to the body, or what the body's going to do to it that's going to, make something, a nasty substance, collect somewhere in your body. The pharmacodynamics and drug metabolism aspects of safety of drugs looks at all those things. When your drug goes into your body, you've got to look where it's collecting in the different organs, and it takes years. It takes roughly 3 years just to do the safety evaluation in animal models. Then it takes, and now you continue that for the next 7 years of clinical trials. None of that took place. So we're going to see the whole mRNA empire collapse. Absolutely. It's like, a company was selling cars in the automotive industry. The wheels were coming off, and the doors were loose and the bolts were properly tightened up. And suddenly people realized that was the case. And no one was going to get into one of those vehicles ever again. And, I sincerely hope that's the trajectory of where we're going at the moment.
They are still pushing it, though. If you look at the man on the land, he's been encouraged to use everything mRNA. In fact, they're working on the saRNA stuff that for animals, for just on crops. We had a gentleman on last night who was talking about how what's the word? How dangerous it is, because it gets in the food chain. And for those people who think, well, I don't eat meat, I'm a vegan, you're still going to get affected, especially with deposits left in the soil. They're using it on plants. So even though it'd be nice to see it disappear, there seems to be another market that has been created for it, and that is with animals and the farm. And we don't want that at all, do we?
No, absolutely not. Almost with animals in the food supply, that's almost a bigger concern. perversely, mainly because obviously if your food's contaminated, then adults are eating it. Then whilst a lot of people have been killed by the jabs, a lot more will be killed if the food supply is contaminated. And the regulations, FDA also have similar regulation to human regulation for veterinary products. In good manufacturing practice and proper distribution procedures are covered by regulation. So again, FDA can jump on this and they can make sure companies are doing all they need to do to protect water and food supplies with animal products. And I must say, I don't want to upset vets, but my wife and I were talking last night about the amount of pressure there is to have your pets vaccinated. And you know, it's a profitable business, and animal health has grown and grown in terms of pharmaceutical company profits. So again, that's something that I think needs to be on the agenda.
I think we need to have a strong government to whether it's UK, New Zealand, Canada, US, or Australia, wherever. You need that strong government to say, stop. You can't keep doing this because you don't know what's going to happen to animals, to wildlife, to people. You have no idea what's going to happen to these people, these living beings, whether they're animal or whether you're whether it's an animal or person, because they haven't got the data available. And so if you start interfering with farm animals or your pets with vaccines, or you start doing stuff to plants and stuff on the land, who knows what's going to happen in 10 years?
Yeah, no, absolutely. I think we've been through a period. I mean, this big pharma, the US passed an act, the Prescription Drug User Fee Act in 1990 something, where those companies had to pay for the services of regulation. And that's expanded over the years until now, effectively, the big pharma companies pay for the FDA. Now, and some of the commissioners came in there, particularly Scott Gottlieb, who left FDA as commissioner and went straight onto the Pfizer board. And commissioners before that, there was a point, others would know better than me, when the commissioner at FDA went from someone who had patients first in their mind to someone who was, I don't know the best word, but wasn't fully cognizant of the need to operate the proper rules and laws to make sure that these companies keep drugs as a minimum safe and hopefully effective. So the first thing we need, and we've got that, is a good, honest commissioner at FDA, and we've got signs that they're building an organization with the competencies to. Well, I think FDA is back to the gold standard. It always was the gold standard. If you remember Vioxx, where Merck tried to cover up the fact that the drug was killing people with heart problems. FDA actually stopped that in its tracks, and and then the standards seem to go down, and now hopefully we're back to where we are. The competent authority is in the US, it's FDA, it's TGA in Australia, it's MHRA in the UK, it's Anvisa in Brazil, and they all need to get back to the country-specific organizations that put patient safety first. After Bill Gates basically captured all of them from 2012 onwards, working with the World Health Organization.
And they've started off beautifully with the CDC director sacked over vaccine policy. Hedley, Rees, if somebody wants to find out more about you and read your latest offerings and some of the not so latest offerings, how do they do that?
Well, my book, Transforming the Pharmaceutical Supply Chain, basically I've invented the strapline for that, which is taking medicines back to the future. So we need to go back to the day of penicillin, August 1928, when Fleming found something in his culture dish that was killing bacteria. It took 16 years to bring penicillin to market, so it's a myth that Fleming actually brought it to market. It took manufacturing supply chain people to get it up to scale and get it to market. And the book is about transforming the whole industry so that it goes back to those standards. That'll be out next month, and it's quite expensive. So that's what I'm focusing my time on now. I've got a newsletter. If you just, I'm on LinkedIn. If you do an internet search on my name, you'll find about 150 interviews on Rumble and all these sort of things. No one's interviewing me anymore, Mike. Only you.
Well, see, we're very lucky. We've spread those terrible rumours about you that you are under contract. How we wish we could be, but we're not. Hedley Rees, always a pleasure. Somebody just pointed out that Bridgend is in Wales. And of course it is, and I've put down England. I owe you 16 glasses of very strong scotch for that. I apologise for ever and a day. But I'll get it right next time, I promise. Hedley Rees, Managing Director and Lead Consultant at PharmaFlow Limited. Thank you very much, sir. This is The World Today.